Late in the 20th century of human civilization, we were presented with Albert. Albert, who was once known as a man in politics, was soon to become a notorious climate gremlin. The world remains in mystery as to why it is a politician who had no degree in climate science, never mind climate theory, could not forecast the weather, and yet, following his last and final defeat in politics, decided to tell the world things that were slightly skewed just enough to cause the entirety of mankind's understanding of climate change to malfunction. One of the first things Albert did was leave out the influence of the sun on our planet in the entirety of his theories. Secondly, Albert the Climate Gremlin used mathematics to help malfunction our understanding of climate science. Most people understand mathematics this way. If A has the value of 2, and you add that to B, the variable representing the value of another 2, it equals 4. That is an absolute, truthful answer. But the way Albert the Climate Gremlin did things was to come up with an outcome or an answer that he wanted. An answer that was predetermined. A solution or understanding that he had already come to. So what he did was he went back to the variables in the equation, and he gave them values that would fit and lead to the answer he had already premeditated. Albert the Climate Gremlin and all the climate scientists that followed his theories adopted the same methodologies. Your desired answer is determined. Let's say, for example, it is 5. Well, you still have much more flexibility in the values of the variables that you need to reach that answer. For example, A could be valued at 2.5, B could be valued at 2.5, and that would equal 5. Or A could be valued at 2, and B could be valued at 3. That would also equal 5. Or A could be valued at 1, and B could be valued at 4. And that too would also equal 5. You in essence come up with a series of truthful equations, simply based on the fact that you had the liberty to make the values of those variables anything that would work to get the same answer. And so, Albert the Climate Gremlin and his fellow man-caused climate change scientists came up with a routine approach. They established the answers that they wanted first, then they figured out how to get the variables to have the values they needed to support those answers. There was always an end game. Say, for example, you want your graph to show a steady rise in surface temperatures on the planet. Well, you do that going all the way down to the source. You, for example, put your temperature sensors near airport runways, near hot asphalt, near hot parking lots, underneath the sun and near hot environments. Do you remember once upon a time when the temperature was the temperature, and that is what the weatherman reported, yes? Well, things are different now. They realized they could get a higher, warmer number by using what they called the feels-like temperature, the heat index calculation, which is a calculation in equation using both the temperature forecasted and the humidity level. And thus you find many weathermen sources, forecasts, and whatnot using the feels-like temperature in their predictions. In addition to the malfeasance that Albert the Climate Gremlin had already imposed into our understanding of climate change, he did something else. He and his peers, his fellow allies in that effort, they made it clear that any scientist who was to express dissent away from their theory would be starved of funding. Anyone who played along and cooperated and helped aid their effort to infuse malfunction in our understanding of climate change, well, they would be rewarded with funding. And now, years later, after this all began, by Albert the Climate Gremlin and his friends in the scientific community, after years of misinformation and disinformation and sheer propaganda has been circulated around the world in classrooms and in all facets of media, just a few years after there should have been no more snowfall seen, when shoreline communities should have already been flooded out. Here I am today in my car, and it is covered with snow.